Hello, buddy. Welcome back to Tin Man's Core Channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, and today I'm reacting my third and final Shiny Gold Tales video for you guys today, and this one's titled Three Disturbing True Stories in the Middle of Nowhere. So without further ado, I'm going to turn these lights off, move the camera up here for you guys, and let's get this reaction on the road and in the bag, shall we? Okay, here we go.
When I was 17 years old, I lived in a rural area in England.
Okay.
It was a small village, if you could even call it that. There were just a few houses and a small store. The closest school was in the next town over, and it was over a half hour away, so every morning I would have to get up at 6 a.m. to catch the bus. It wasn't all bad though, because there were two other kids my age who lived there, Connor and Courtney. Courtney was a year below me, and Connor was in my class. We took the bus together every morning, and over the weekends and holidays, we would hang out at each other's houses and loiter around the shop. At the time, I had a cat I had gotten for my 15th birthday. His name was King because he looked like a king. He was a huge white cat with green eyes and an attitude. I loved that cat very much, so when he went missing, it really messed me up. I spent weeks crying my eyes out.
I never had a cat or dog or any other pet that you have to have on a leash, but if they go missing, I will feel your pain because you would think it's not like them to just run away. They always stick close to home. But let's just see what happened, shall we?
Waiting for him to come home, but he never did. Soon I started to hear that a lot of the neighbors' cats had been disappearing as well. None of them had been found on the roads, so people assumed that a fox had gotten them. It was the weekend, and me, Connor, and Courtney had become bored of hanging around at Courtney's house, so we decided to go exploring. That meant that we would walk around on one of the back roads until we got completely lost, and then we would try to find our way back. That was a silly game that we would play sometimes, but it was fun.
First of all, I don't mind the exploring aspect, but if we went on a certain road and we got lost, I'd be like, this ain't fun and games no more. But I got a weird feeling when he said that all the other cats in the neighborhood were disappearing too. So it ain't just one cat missing. And if it was a fox, you would have seen little paw prints of a fox in your yard or signs of blood if they attacked him at the throat. You don't see that? Must be a crazy, deranged killer out there on the loose.
We were going up a back road where we had never been before. We eventually came across a path leading off the road. It was unkempt and looked like no one had used it for years. We went down the path, excited to see where it led, and we got even more excited when we found an old rundown house at the end. The door was open and barely standing. Connor carefully moved it aside, and we went in. The place had a putrid smell, and I'm pretty sure it retched a little. Everything was filthy and falling apart. Just being there gave me a weird, sick feeling in my stomach. Something didn't feel right. Courtney must have felt it too, because she immediately began to complain that we should leave. I would have left if I hadn't been trying to impress Connor, who at the time I had a huge crush on. So instead of agreeing with her, Connor and I called her a wuss and teased her until she agreed to come with us through the rest of the house. We went through what looked to be the living room. It was covered with dirt and piles of trash. The smell got worse as we made it to the bottom of the stairs. Courtney made it clear that she didn't want to go up there, but when we told her to wait for us at the bottom, she made it clear that she didn't want to do that either, so we all went up together. Courtney was clinging to my arm, and I was clinging to Connor's, who went up first. At the top of the stairs, there was a corridor with 3 rooms. It was just as filthy as downstairs, and the smell was even worse. We went into the first room, Connor first, and when he stepped in, he froze. I looked over his shoulder and nearly puked. The room was full of decomposing bodies of what looked to be cats, all piled up against the wall. The stench was horrendous. I heard Connor whisper, "Oh crap," under his breath. I guess Courtney, who was outside the room, heard too, because she loudly began asking what it was. Before I could tell her to shut up, from the corner of the room, something came flying through the air. It hit Connor right in the chest and then fell to the floor. It was a decaying cat corpse, and it was followed by a deranged scream saying, "Get out." Then from the same corner stumbled a filthy old man. He staggered towards us. We immediately got out of there. We ran until we couldn't run anymore. Luckily, we remembered our way back, but it took us at least 30 minutes to get home.
I knew it. It had to be some deranged person killing cats because there will be no other reason for dead cat bodies to be lying in a house and no fox would be dragging them in there. But it'd be kind of creepy that a dead cat body would be just hurled towards your body and then you see a old man telling you to get out. I will not only take that advice, but I'll be getting my phone out and calling the cops and telling them what we just saw. And hopefully get down there to him and arrest that guy before he leaves.
I cried and repeatedly asked Connor if he thought my cat was in there. He just kept saying that he didn't know and asked me if the man followed us. We finally made it back to Courtney's house. We quickly explained what happened, and Courtney's mom called my mom, Connor's mother, then the police, who came by a couple hours later and took statements. Connor told me that they came back a few days later and said the cats were there, but there was no sign of the man. When I was visiting my mother earlier this month, my boyfriend and I went to check out the house, but it had been knocked down. I have no idea what that man was doing there that day, or if he killed all those cats, but I have a feeling that my cat was somewhere within those corpses, and it still makes me feel sick to this day. There are some messed up people out there.
You got that right. I'm just glad the cops were able to find all the cat corpses and believe you on that part of the story, but since the guy's gone, they can't do anything about it. And now you said that your boyfriend and you went back to that house and it's gone. Bet you either the old man burnt it down or somebody that owned that property decided to bulldoze it down and get rid of it. But I'm sorry that you had to discover that with your friends. I know it must be heart-wrenching to know that your cat is amongst all the other rotting dead cat bodies. Let's get to story number 2.
I was around 16 at the time, and I was attending a new secondary school. During my early days there, I met a rather charming guy, who we'll call Jacob. Even though Jacob was quite endearing, he seemed to show an unsettling amount of quirkiness. Not the quirkiness that you'll see in those nerdy people who are into Marvel comics like me, but the type that will make you think that this particular person could be a potential serial killer. Being the pushover and overly friendly person I was, I put that aside and became friends with him. One Saturday afternoon, Jacob invited me over to his place. I didn't have anything else to do, so I accepted the invitation. Around 20 minutes later, he picked me up and took me there, since he was able to drive. When we arrived at his house, I took a look at the property. It was out in the bush, a big property with a main house where his parents and sister lived, then a granny flat about 10 meters from the main house, where Jacob lived by himself. I checked my phone for the time. It was around 5 in the evening. It was then that I noticed that I had no cell reception. That was strange because Telstra, the phone company I'm with, is very good with their reception.
I wouldn't say anything about living on a big property where the parents live in the main house and he gets to live in a flat house on the property. I wouldn't mind that myself because I could have my own house and my parents live right next door. But that is kind of strange that if you are out there and your phone don't have no reception, and you said your phone company is reliable, and in circumstances like that, you may be out way too deep in the bush to where your phone can't pick up service at all. But let's just see what happens next.
And normally I can get decent signals even when I'm out in the bush. I felt like I was in a classic horror movie scenario, but I pushed that thought out of my mind. Once we were in his place, we went to the kitchen/living room. He went off to have a shower. As I heard the water flowing in his bathroom, I decided to do a little bit of snooping around. Nothing too privacy invading, just to look at the decor in his place and see what his room was like. In the midst of my snooping, I saw various things. His old jersey from when he used to play rugby, a few paintings he did, since he's an art student, and a photo booth style photo of him and what looked like an ex-girlfriend. The creepy part, though, was his room. I stepped into his bedroom. At first it seemed normal. There was a bed with a nightstand, and a desk with a high-tech computer and camera, stuff like that. But as I looked closer, a half-open drawer in his nightstand caught my attention. When I looked into the drawer, I noticed something that raised red flags. A big, sharp butcher's knife, rope, handcuffs, and a bottle of something that I couldn't identify. I tried to brush it off, but something in me knew that there was something really fishy going on here.
Yeah, that's a little fishy. He probably brings home a bunch of dates, probably ties them up and tortures them to death. And his parents are so innocent in the fact they don't know what their son is doing. That is creepy to find in a guy's drawer by his bed.
Shortly after that, I heard the shower turn off, so I scurried back to where I was sitting before he had the shower and acted like I was trying to get reception on my phone. He came out of the bathroom, dried and dressed. He made an amusing remark about the reception here. Then he walked up behind where I was sitting and unexpectedly hugged me and scooped me up bridal style and carried me into his bedroom. These sudden actions made me have a mini anxiety attack, and I was a little bit fearful for my life. After he placed me on his bed, Jacob proceeded to go to the tripod next to his desk and prop his camera up on it and directed it towards me. That made me want to get out of there fast. My heart was pounding in fear. I thought he was going to do something to me and film it all on camera to put it on the deep web, since he told me he visits it sometimes. I quickly took out my phone and pretended to read a text from my mom saying that I needed to come home right away. I lied to him and told him that my mom was coming to pick me up. Then I apologized for my unforeseen leave and bid him farewell before I rushed off his property. When I was 1 or 2 streets away, I had reception, so I called my next-door neighbor to pick me up, since my mom was out of town that night. Once my friend got there, I told her some made-up story of why I was there, and then she took me home. Ever since that incident, I was scared of Jacob, and I tried to avoid him from then on. After he graduated, I blocked him on all contacts and never talked to him again. That night was the most fearful night I've ever experienced. Because of that, I'm more careful of who I spend time with, alone.
I'm glad you did the right thing and try to avoid talking to him and blocked him from all your contacts, like on your phone, Facebook, Twitter, or anything like that. But I would have still told the neighbor, since they're picking you up, and they probably would have suggested calling the cops. And if his parents got mad at you for doing that, I don't care, because they need to know the truth about their son. He was probably planning on making a sex tape and then post it on the deep web after you were dead and gone. So you did the right thing in coming up with that lie saying you gotta go. That is really creepy.
When I was 16 years old, I played in a band with some friends from school. Our drummer Randy's family lived at the top of a mountain about 10 miles from our town. We practiced in a small building on their property to avoid noise complaints, which we would surely have gotten in town. The mountain was a labyrinth of unpaved roads, with a few houses separated from each other by stretches of dense forest. I had met a few of Randy's neighbors, and they seemed mostly like normal people who just wanted to live closer to nature. However, Randy's stepdad, Jack, a 6'5" tattooed ex-biker, warned us that he had heard stories of people moving there to hide their drug operations in the woods. Around this time, I had started dating a new girl, but because of her strict family, we'd only been able to see each other at school. However, it turned out that she had a friend who lived on the same mountain as Randy. She decided to sleep over at her friend's house on Friday so that we could come over and see her after practice. I passed the directions she gave me on to Randy, and while he seemed uncertain about them, he agreed to help me find the house. After our rehearsal was finished that Friday, Randy and I got into my car and started trying to follow my girlfriend's directions. After the first couple of turns, we were on a road lined with tall trees that completely blotted out the moonlight. We were supposed to turn off the road somewhere, but between the darkness and my girlfriend's vague directions, we had no idea which of the several narrow paths leading farther into the woods was the right one. After a few minutes, we decided we must have missed the road, so I turned around at the first house I saw to take another look. Once again, we couldn't decide which road was the one we were looking for. We didn't want to take a wrong turn and end up in the middle of someone's property in the dead of night, so we turned around at another house to make one more pass. It wasn't long after that I glanced in my rearview mirror and saw a pair of headlights quickly closing in, much more quickly than was reasonable on this rough dirt road in the pitch blackness.
Yep, you're being followed. It might be somebody got a tip on where you were going or wanted to see his girlfriend too. I don't know. That's kind of strange that you're going to the place where she said to meet her at, and that guy's right behind you. Don't get too nervous. Stay calm and try to find a way to lose him.
I mentioned it to Randy, but he waved it off. Probably just some crazy guy, he said, not exactly easing my nerves. Just let them pass, he added. I slowed to a crawl and pulled as close to the side of the road as I safely could, waiting on the car to pass. Instead of going around, though, it got right on my bumper. At this point, we were starting to panic, and I was becoming convinced that we had somehow pissed off one of the drug dealers Jack had warned us about. I sped up, and the car kept pace. When I accelerated even more, they finally passed, but rather than continuing on, the driver performed a perfect bootleg turn, sliding to a stop a few yards ahead, now facing my car, with their high beams on. Needless to say, Randy and I were losing it, screaming random obscenities for a few seconds before either of us was able to think straight. Summoning a driving skill I didn't know I had, I threw the car into reverse and floored it. I somehow managed to get turned around in the direction of Randy's house, without ending up in a ditch. I think I took the other driver by surprise, because we had a pretty good head start before he took off in pursuit. At the speed we were going, it only took a couple minutes to get back to Randy's house, but the other car tailed us the whole way. We whipped into the driveway, almost jumping out of my car before it stopped. The other vehicle, which I could now see was a police car with the lights and markings removed, slid to a stop behind us, blocking us in. Randy and I sprinted for the front door, and did the only thing we could think to do in our panicked state. We yelled for Jack to come out and save us. Jack, who was sitting in his recliner, watching TV, wearing only a pair of shorts, calmly got up and walked out to the front porch. As he did so, a chubby old man, probably in his late 50s, climbed out of the other car, but immediately stopped behind his open door when he saw the big, half-naked biker dude who was now standing between him and us. It only took a few questions from Jack, who was actually a nice guy, before our pursuer was reduced to a stammering, nervous mess. It turns out that, unknown to me, both times I had turned around, it had been on his driveway. After seeing my headlights for the second time, he decided to chase us down, assuming we were up to something illegal. After explaining himself, he angrily informed us that he was a retired state trooper, and that he had radioed the police to come and arrest us for trespassing. He then jumped back into his car and took off. Unsurprisingly, no police ever arrived, and we ended up laughing the whole thing off as a random encounter with a crazy but harmless old man. Still, it was enough to scare me, and I never ventured too far from Randy's house on that mountain again.
Okay, really? They won't know random dude that was tailing them from where that guy lived or worked at. Turned out to be a guy that lives on that road, and he just wanted to follow them just to see what they were doing. But you shouldn't have to get up on bumper to bumper like that, because you keep following them at the same speed, they're going to get nervous. But thankfully, their biker friend kind of straightened it out with that dude. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on those post notifications for more Shiny Gold Tails reactions like this. This has been another successful installment of the Tin Man Score channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor. That's a wrap, and have a nice day, y'all.